if you're Alex in the middle of their midnight. Did I get the transcript? Yeah. I always think these transcripts are 50-50. We recorded one meeting where Nigel was talking and it like put in a bad word for him, so we couldn't publish the transcript. Something like that. Okay, well, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining. To start things off, we do have an update coming from Pat. If you want to go ahead and break the ice on that, Pat.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited that I'm going to be transitioning my role on this committee over to Nick Clarke. Obviously subject to approval of the group and everything, and I'm going to be moving over to, what is it, utility working group committee? Is that the name?
Utility parentheses commercialization. I think they're still deciding the title, but
yeah, and I think I'm just I'm in awe of all the technical skills of the folks here that I think are just much more value added for this committee, and I was excited to be a member of it and to kind of explore this broader consciousness to what we see, happening all around us with OSPOs spinning up, and what does that mean for the Cardano ecosystem. So I'm glad to just see some very technical folks, I think, being able to add some more velocity to this discussion, and where I think I'm better suited to help is the universe of companies that want to adopt and build on top of this ecosystem. So I'm really excited, Christian, to get the chance to continue to work with you in that regard. So I'll be keeping an eye on this guy, on you guys, but just appreciate being a member of this group for the last few months.
Yeah, I want to thank you for also helping us get this off the ground, started and running as well. And I think Nick will be a value add as well. So, and I think a lot of the guys are familiar with Nick already altogether as well. So, yeah, sad to see Pat leave. He'll still be in my ballpark. So if y'all want to know where he's reporting from, I can give that update every week. Okay.
We got to keep the ratio of Americans to Europeans, somewhat even on some of these, committees.
Yeah. Okay. Well, because you had a short time, I wanted to bring that one up first. But going down the agenda, starting with old business, Marcin, didn't know if you wanted to give an update regarding the pilot process for the governance policy. Yeah.
Okay. So we have the policy. I think we're starting now 2 groups that will. One is the networking group. To be a work group meeting established for us, and we'll start to thinking how to actually use the open source policy in that regard. There's also Lace team, right, Chris? That's also starting their working.
Yeah, I had heard they had started that. I need to catch up with them this next week on it.
Yeah, I think they're a little bit ahead of us because they already have a meeting, a public meeting.
Yeah,
they do stuff. On another positive note, we actually are getting some open source pull requests to some of the work we're doing in the network. Not big things, but small ones. But still, it's really nice to see them coming. Yeah,
I think it even a little bit to y'all's focus because it's so in depth, in particular to Cardano. If we can build a good contributor base for y'all, it'll be a good process.
Yeah, some of them are related to Cardano. It's like updating documentation, finding actually bugs in documentation. Another ones are more towards the wider Haskell ecosystem in which we write, to which we contribute, and we have some open source libraries that people are contributing to. Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. Any questions for Marcin on that? If not, okay. I wanted to briefly deviate because I want to get a rubber stamp on my planning from the committee regarding a 2024 roadmap. So this is what I'm viewing the open source side of Intersect to be working on via the OSPO, and just want to make sure that this kind of aligns. So this will be the summary slide. I did share this in the Discord with everyone, and I think the Slack channel. But essentially, Q1, it's governance and foundations, kind of the hot topic, which is basically getting everything set up, getting all our initial policies, the open source strategy written in its first draft, establishing our functional reporting areas and delivery assurance all together. That presentation Matt Davis presented, I think, 2 weeks ago. And then doing a GitHub audit just to make sure we're in line with the policies that we have and seeing gaps for things that we need. So those are kind of the 4 key areas that I wanted to focus on. And I think the Q1 reporting, because Intersect's following somewhat of a PI planning cadence. So I think that we'll have 4 reporting areas quarterly. And I think this Q1 ends in March 20, the end of March. And then Q2 is after we got this initial stuff set up, the focus is kind of testing all of it and optimizing those processes. So we have a strategy, but now we're actually going to test it against the core Cardano repos as a proof of concept for open source, and then take any of the pilot insights from that and refine the strategy and the policies. So it's a continuative improvement process. And it's not like, oh, we have the final strategy and that's that. That strategy will continue to go through iterations as we keep going. I also am going to be developing metrics and reporting mechanisms for OSPO, open source growth, things that, not vanity metrics, but things that actually prove that we are doing things better. And then getting a better definition on the project incubation process. I think Q1, Q2 is focusing on what's under the Intersect umbrella altogether, but I want Q2 to plan how we can better partner with the broader ecosystem, i.e. having where we could even have a bridge from projects that successfully graduated from Catalyst can come to Intersect to help grow their contributor base. Some paths like that, as well as partnering with other ecosystems. And then Q3 is more a question. I can't see.
Yeah, it's me, Sebastian. So you just mentioned incubating from Catalyst to this more full-fledged model, right? So maybe the thing we are setting stage for. Is this already has this been really discussed? Like that maybe Catalyst is an early stage, and then there could be graduation.
Well, so Catalyst will remain its own entity. It's just for some of the projects that get funded from it. It's been a like pub conversation idea. So it's just an example for something that may happen, may not. It needs to go through a full discovery. And first, I want to figure out what Intersect's process is before I tie it into any external pieces. So the incubation policy I'm going to be focusing on is anyone that's interested in joining Intersect as is, and then how we could help that project develop. And then I'll look at external pathways, if that answers the question.
I'm not at all against that, right? Just really, I'm quite sympathetic to that idea. I guess the Catalyst is a bit of a wild mix, right, of projects, and kind of giving some kind of at least, okay, this is what direction you could evolve to, right? A bit more sanity, a bit more structure, or kind of following some policies and having a bit like a really compatible governance eventually, right? So really mature out of this, do this proposal and then do the project and just be done with it again. I think that could work well, or we should definitely also seek inspiration on what's currently being done on Catalyst if for all this like kind of grants or incubation or like anything.
I agree with that because it answers the question. Okay, I got funding and finished the project. What's next, right? Instead of just going through the same process again, it actually helps provide a path forward if you're not sure what you want to do.
Adam, please go on. I think I just passed the baton.
Yeah, first and foremost, can you guys hear me? I'm currently in a car in Indianapolis on my Bose noise canceling headsets, and I wasn't sure if they even had a mic, so that's good to know.
That's cool.
So yeah, so could we consider things like NAMI and Blockfrost now at this point to have been kind of candidate pilots for how this kind of Catalyst to Intersect process goes?
We could look into that. I first got to finalize the initial draft and then us discuss it before and then enact it. And then we can identify the pilot projects to test it.
Okay. Yeah. Because, I mean, I got funded in this latest round to do our IBC Cosmos bridge, which is going to be all open source one way or another. So yeah, like they're definitely, it's interesting to bring the structure, like what Michael PJ has laid out in the charter for the PMCs and things like that, and see ways that open source projects in the ecosystem, even not under the Intersect umbrella, can still kind of abide by the same guidelines that we set in this group to be well managed and well run open source projects, whether or not they live under Intersect. So I'm excited from that perspective to lay out this good framework of, here's, I guess, FOSS best practices is probably the best way to look at it. So,
yeah, I'm also thinking because you don't even have to be under the Intersect umbrella, but if you're a member of Intersect, you could even have some project support services that I need to break out further in detail that help make the project more market aware and potentially partner opportunities that come as a benefit of that.
I think we need to even like at this Q2, Q3 here, right? Really looking, if you look further than the just migrated repos, which are basically already a step better than under IHK on GitHub, right? Now they're Intersect and GitHub with similar maintainers. But how would we, and I see this onboard external open source projects here, right? Really, what does external mean? Like really, I think ideally we would even enable being part of Intersect, contributing to the Cardano ecosystem at large, even if your mode of operation is not exactly being part of not even using GitHub, for example, as long as it's like open and available and the governance follows these kind of rules, right? Which is inclusive and transparent and so on, right? Then anything should qualify, right? So kind of making that policy to our policies to also capture this eventually, right? We don't need to do it right away. I think kind of really testing it out on what we know already, what is already like kind of related is good, but kind of expanding a bit is making it more flexible, more inclusive, and also have maybe these, more like a clear guideline, even if they're not under this umbrella, but what does it really mean under the umbrella, right?
Yeah. And to you mentioning Q3, that's kind of where I wanted to explore that path. Q3 and Q4 are kind of loosely in the sand. These are my ideas, but as we obviously do the strategy and refine it in Q2, we'll re-elaborate these goals in Q3, Q4 to see if that's what we want to do or pivot to a different objective. I'll be proposing this every quarter for the committee to endorse for each one. But I definitely, when I meant by external projects, it's partnering potentially with other foundations as well that have interest to us. And Hyperledger is one that I'm looking into right now. I have a good connection with Hart, their CTO, and just trying to see what opportunities there are for us. I leave that as a broad term because I honestly don't know exactly right now. But I think the more that it's less Intersect centric, the better we are when we're doing initiatives in some regards.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. I think even if it's not exactly like these quarters, right? There is always this like refine, improve, like continuous reflect and so on. I think maybe if you want to go by some really metrics or measuring success here, right, is like how many of these projects are kind of following like the guidelines, right? Or we could capture, not really capture, right, but rather give input to. Maybe I'm not sure what qualifies in following the guideline or not, but the reach of this of the policies, I guess this could be like something we could measure even.
Well, and it's a loaded term, using open source maturity and trying to come up with a grade scale for it. It's not something that I would want to use to like punish projects or bring humiliation or anything like that, but like something that we can grade towards and improve on, and try to determine the most appropriate metrics towards that.
I could rather see like, right, the number of repositories who refer to like following this charter or this one policy, right? So if you just be able to count the backlinks to our policy X and Y, right, this is something we can measure, and but doesn't really say anything about, okay, they are at this stage of maturity or not. But still, right, it kind of would give an like of an objective measure and even something a KPI we could work on. And see, okay, it seems to work out for these repositories, right? So we kind of those follow the rules, or at least they claim that they do.
I agree with that. I just got to keep tight to time real fast. So this document is shared, and I add some sub bullets to it, explaining each of the quarters. Kind of better to explain the high level process behind it. But is there any like big outstanding things of any initiative that I should not be doing within Q1, Q2 on this roadmap for anyone? Okay, I'll take silence as the thumbs up from everybody then. So I'll go ahead.
I think it's good that we don't do too much too early, right? So I mean, there is this also the source licensing discussion which got kicked off and has a lot of like
implications.
Power, right? Yeah, no, it can get heated or it can be exciting, right?
We have
on that.
Go ahead,
do we
Adam.
want to explicitly say that the security policy should get wrapped up in Q1? Because we kind of kicked that off last meeting, but we haven't really followed up on it yet. But I think having that security procedure in place is probably pretty critical before we start bringing in more people into our sandbox. We need to know, like, particularly if there's bugs and security vulnerabilities, how are those getting reported and escalated appropriately?
I'll if you want to be included in that, I'll tie you in. I'm gonna try to get an initiative out of Michael. I just didn't want to throw him under the meeting. He's not attending, so.
Oh no, I mean, no better time than the present, right? Yeah, it's all Michael's fault since he's not here to defend himself. But yeah, I think that, I definitely want to be involved in that discussion because I do think that's probably one of the most high priorities, right? Like things will get worked on and released and everything else, and they'll kind of survive. But knowing how we escalate and disclose security issues is pretty critical.
Okay. Yeah, I'll get that notated, and I'll set up a meeting next week once Michael's back, so that we can get things kicked off. So right off of that, we're gonna go into. I'm gonna hand it off to Gheorge. He's gonna give an update on the strategy and OSPO work, which is connected to that roadmap, and what they're doing this week.
Thank you very much. I hope the sharing will work. So we are in fact in the third project week, in the week 7 from 2024. And this is a weekly report for the last week. Let's move it. In fact, we are covering these two positions in our structure today. And we are working hardly for the Q1. The first objective, establish the OSPO governance model and structure, has these underpoints or subtasks we identified following the OODA loop. The OODA loop is the loop that we'll use in the case of all four key points that we decided to implement until the end of March. This is the status for our strategy and policies. This is for the governance model and structure. This is the status for functional reporting areas for delivery assurance and for the GitHub audit or policy alignment. Of course, the colors has meanings in this case. What is with red, it's in to-do status. What is with orange, it's in progress. And what is green, it's already done. On the timeline, a small roadmap marks our key points, key deliverables that we have to deliver. So the first draft of the document for the strategy, it's planned to be delivered at the end of this month. It will be the first draft that will be delivered to you, to community. It will be continuous adapted until the end of March, when we want to finalize this document and to deliver the final version of it, to be able to move to the Q2. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, please.
Perfect. Thank you, Gheorge.
Thank you very much.
Help build off of that too. We did make one major achievement. I'm jumping into Q2 progress ahead of time. But when it talks about metrics and reporting, I had the honor of going to an open source summit at some time when I was at IOG. I can't remember when, but I came across Biturgia and the Grimoire Lab and ChaosCon. It's a whole community about open source everything and how you actually pull metrics for it. And so I actually got an instance running up on my old laptop. I finally became technical for a little bit. If y'all know Ryan Williams, he helped me do this, but I got it successfully running on my machine. He's still working on his, so I take that as a badge of accomplishment since I'm not the most technical. But this will allow us to pull some metrics. It still needs to be configured so we can actually prove organizations. This is one that has everyone listed as unknown. I need to get the config file written so it'll actually pull the organizations too. But one of the things I saw that Intersect Twitter was bragging about was that Cardano had more developer activity than other ecosystems, and Ethereum included. And I was curious because they didn't get into the actual filter of everything. So I thought it was still maybe very central development that was going on. But actually, if you pull up the projects that are being worked on, let's just do, I think DB Sync's a good example. If we have it. Or, yeah, here we go. So, or no, not DB Sync, maybe Launcher. But there's actually multiple domains from people who contribute to the projects. And it's not just IOHK emails, it's other people too. So it actually proves that we're not so much of a centralized development when we actually have people contributing more than just the central companies. So actually that was a cool tool. There's a lot more to come out of this. But yeah, this is high level thing we have going on in the background. So I'll try to get states of the open source projects once I figure out what those metrics are, and we'll have something that we can actually disseminate and prove that we actually are going along the maturity journey. Any questions regards that? We will get it hosted on some server and leave it open so other people can come in. I'm thinking we might even have a public one. There's like 200 different filters that you can use to look at all that. So I'll leave it open for everyone to configure their dashboard how they like it, and I'll have mine that I'll use weekly. so, so that one's that. I need to get it on a server anyway. It's using 60% of my CPU power at the moment. Okay. Next on the agenda, project incubation policy. So slap on my wrist. I wasn't able to get that done because I was getting the neat tool that I just showed y'all set up. So I'm hoping that gives me mercy to get y'all the draft by next week. And get more details on that. But I did finally got to the Hyperledger examples and I talked with I think Daniela, who's the general manager of the Linux Foundation, and Hart also with Hyperledger. And they confirmed that all the Linux projects have a similar project lifecycle that they use. It's just they use different nomenclature for the different maturity phases, and they have different requirements. And I did talk with Michael Peyton Jones on, I think there's an open SSF badge that they require for projects that onboard, but some of that is seriously overkill for saying you're open source mature. And I don't know if a lot of beginning projects would have that stage of open source maturity before they join. So I want to take a deeper dive into their context, pull what's applicable, and I hope to have a PR draft by next Friday for everyone to look at, and I'll do a neat little presentation. But yeah, that's update on that for right now. The next thing is I brought Gemma over to assist. Gemma. Okay, I keep saying Gemma. I might just do it for the memes. But I know we've had a lot of questions around funding and grants and opportunities for projects at Intersect, and this is currently the best pathway that we do have, while the rest is still being explored and decided. So I wanted to hand it over to her to kind of explain what that is, and then questions for anyone.
Thank you, Christian. So nice to meet everybody. My name's Gemma. I'm head of community tools here at Intersect, and I'm here to help manage the grant process. So I'm just going to talk you through a little bit about our community tooling and what it's all about, just to give you a flavour of where we're up to. So essentially, community tooling is a set of tools, applications, resources that we want to be created by community members to support 1694 governance technology for Cardano blockchain. And essentially, Intersect has been given funding by the Cardano Dev Trust to award grants to members of the community to support Intersect to achieve its goals for 2024 and essentially serve the Cardano ecosystem. So you can see the goals there at the bottom of the slide. So our first goal is 1694 governance technology becoming live and functioning and working. The second one is having Intersect being fully operational, so having all of the committees like yourselves running, working in a fully operational state. And then the third is around the Constitution being fully delivered and ratified with a constitutional convention. So you will probably know that grants actually kicked off late end of last year. And so we started off with the core tech, which was actually slightly different in the process that we drove for that, in the sense that Intersect approached builders in the community that they knew could develop certain core tech tools. So that was really to build out the core technology of Cardano 1694. And so we had about 15 companies that we approached for that. And I can share the full list with you if you wish to see that. And they're all doing work which we should have closeout reports by the end of May, which as they move through their milestones, we will update and share their progress with the community. Then the second one is We Deliver. So this was the proposal discussion forum. We Deliver have been the chosen candidates to build this tool. And they kicked off their work about 3 weeks ago. And we are due to have a finished tool by June. And again, as we move forward, I'll share the updates that comes through that. And so DREP, campaign platform, and the Constitutional Committee portal, the winners have been publicly announced about 5 minutes ago. So I've just been told, so I can share. This is subject to contracts being approved, but for the Constitutional Committee portal, we have chosen Bloxico, so we'll be working with them. And for the DREP campaign platform, Leader Nation is our preferred candidate. So those are the companies that we'll be working with. And again, we'll share their progress as we move forward. Then the categories that are in progress. So we've got the education and multimedia category, which closed a couple of weeks ago, for which we had over 40 applications. So a lot of interest there. So we've been working quite hard internally to review all of those applications. And the process that we currently have in place is that once we have reviewed internally and put forward our preferred candidates, this then gets ratified by the MCC. Now, this was a process that worked when we had not so many applications, but we found with the education and multimedia category, it's just been a lot to manage, really for us to do internally. So the procedure moving forward, again, this has been announced today, is that we are putting forward a request to start up a working group. And so essentially we want to decentralize the process and ask for community members to come forward to help us put together a working group, which will help us to evaluate proposals coming through, but also think about potentially future grant categories. And now I say that with a caveat, because as we move forward again, the vision committee will be set up and some of the vision around where grants will go will come from there. But essentially it's to support with the grant community tooling process. So if you're interested, please let me know. If you receive our newsletter, if you follow us on Twitter, there's a Google form that's gone out, which you'll need to fill out just to express your interest and your experience. Obviously, I know that you guys are probably quite tied up with doing this already. But yeah, if you're interested, please do fill out the form. And so just to carry on, so you can see there, we've also got the open category and the inclusion and accessibility category. So the open category is open and will stay open until the end of March. We are due to open the inclusion and accessibility category probably end of Feb, I'd say, beginning of March. There's actually been quite a lot of crossover between the education and multimedia category and the inclusion and accessibility category, especially in terms of language and localization. So that's been quite interesting to see. And we may move some of the applications that were unsuccessful for the education and multimedia category to the inclusion and accessibility. We really want to have a variety of lots of different builders that we give out the grants to, because we want to decentralize it and essentially have lots of things happening in the community with lots of different involvement. As I also mentioned, we have thought quite long and hard about the categories that will be announced after the inclusion and accessibility category. I'm not yet in a position to reveal that yet. I just need a few more confirmations from people at Intersect. But yeah, as I say, we want to make sure this is aligned with Intersect goals and aligned with what the community also wants to develop and build out, essentially. So this is just a bit of a roadmap in terms of what we've got planned so far. I haven't added the new categories yet, so yeah, that's just what we've got for the time being. Sebastian, I can see you've got your hand up.
Yeah. Quick question. So I haven't seen in detail these grants yet, so thanks for showing it, or that this is actually happening. How long and how high in volume are such grants typically? I see it here, 10, 12
Yeah.
weeks, something.
Yeah, so this again is a process that we're looking to reduce in terms of length. So you can see 0.6, for example, at the moment we've got 6 weeks for due diligence, 2 weeks for due diligence. I think we can reduce that down. I think that could be done in a couple of days, but as we've obviously separated from IOG, we've had to set up our new due diligence checks and processes and choose a new supplier. So we're still going through that. But once we've got our preferred supplier, which should be confirmed next week, then I think I can reduce that time. Yeah.
And this is until the project starts, right? So, and how big are these projects? Is it like a couple months, or is it like for a full year, or how it is
really
reviewed and also in the end?
Yeah, so really ranging from about 4 to 6 months. So the stuff with the proposed discussion forum, that's about 5-6 months. CC portal will be 5-6 months. Direct campaign platform about 5 months. The stuff in the education and multimedia stuff, that depends. It's quite variable. It depends what people have pitched for, whether it's a one-off event or whether it's a series of podcasts or educational materials, such as like YouTube videos and stuff like that. But how does it get reviewed was your second question. So they're all milestone agreements. So payment is issued once the milestone is complete, and that is showcased by a report and some type of, again, depending on what it is, video or something to show that the acceptance criteria has been proven.
Yeah.
And again, to add to that, so the working group that I mentioned, we may, depending on who we have come forward and how people want to do this, we may ask the working group to support with some milestone approvals. Currently, it's our product team at Intersect that are doing that. It may also feed into the TSC, the Technical Steering Committee. That's again a possibility. Yeah, so as you can see, we're learning as we move.
Yeah, I think it's a very nice process. I think Intersect needs to, or I think the intention is that Intersect will be this grant giving body, overseeing body, whereas even the bigger projects will kind of be somehow modeled in this process, right? So like Cardano, or like continuity of the Cardano node, for example, like eventually this will be like probably even much bigger than these things here, right? But I think it's very interesting to see a different model here, and the need is kind of specced out a bit by Intersect, but then I think it sounds like it's more like a tender being put out. People can apply for it, say, okay, I could serve it by you doing this and this in detail. This is the exact or the more exact breakdown of work maybe, and then I think the tender is kind of given to a winning party, right? And then this disappears at least like this, as it works like this.
Yeah, exactly. So this was my final slide. This was what I was saying about the call out to the community. So around the working group, so helping with proposal evaluations, milestone approvals, and potentially something around the selection of future categories. So I hope that's been helpful. If you've got any questions or you want to follow up with me, let me know. We have our grant office hours scheduled next week. There's one on Wednesday, one on Thursday. So yeah, thank you. I will stop sharing.
Yeah, thanks, Gemma. Got it right this time. But I think that helps answer some questions that we had around that, right?
Yeah.
I know our committee's kind of been too isolated. But
I mean,
guess-
in the end, we can only do so much, right? I mean, everybody here has like a full bandwidth already, and but I think it helps me a lot in kind of seeing this getting started and really things by just trying it out on these smallish projects, right, where you kind of build the tools for Voltaire or the supporting tools here, right? That's very nice. I would be most interested to see how you kind of now, as an open source committee member here, right? How did you say, okay, what is it as a requirement in terms of open sourcing and kind of what's the result is to be like, how is it going to be governed and what level of quality here and there maybe. So, I mean, traditionally, first thought is, oh yeah, okay, it must be open source under a permissive license, for example, right? But probably this could be also free and people can say, oh yeah, we intend to build this, open source it, but we'll also run a product with the same code, right? Is this okay or not? This is very interesting.
Yeah, so we have an element of that in our evaluation. Something where is what is being proposed fit for purpose? Does it fit our requirements? Does it meet our cost sort of bucket? Can we afford it? Is it good value for money? Then there's always something around the team structure, and then something around the actual plan, so the milestones and all of that. But obviously, it is very important.
Would be good if I mean, maybe these are very early stages, right? And we don't have a clear, but maybe you can already hint at this kind of policy of how to run the project as by the guidelines you set in like the Intersect open source policy and so on, right? So maybe not yet enforced, but maybe, hey, yeah, you're applying for this grant, cool. Yeah, have you seen this governance policy? We might want you to kind of follow maybe some of these practices.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'll link that over to you, Gemma, as well.
Thank you.
And to your point, Sebastian, I think we'll have more to put into that, but first we got to get the policies written too.
No, it's okay.
Or
right?
we can dabble a little. This will exist, right?
I want to create a feedback loop, right? Already, also not only with the legacy projects which are already there and have been like corporate project, right? IOG Cardano development is a corporate setting, and we just put this now here a bit into more open, but it's still this very big established teams, right? Then we have on the other far end of the spectrum, you have Catalyst, right? It's like Wild West. And then we have now these new grants, these things for purpose built things. That's cool. And ideally, I would want to know, right, whether these served tenders or kind of projects giving out to third parties, right, or like anyone really, whether what is their opinion about like also our emerging policies, and you don't need to enforce them, right? It's more like, okay, you should try to live by it, and if not, we want to see you contributing to it, right? That is a condition to the grant, maybe.
I like that. Yeah.
So I don't want to do the work, right? I just want to see, okay, that's cool. I want to see, just check, right? Have others kind of contribute by doing already. And that's multiple avenues, because for me it's always Friday afternoon and I can't really actually do real work here in this committee other than just get people together or tie knots, right?
It's the advisory body for a reason, right? We advise.
Yep.
And I think the structure is working that way, at least for the interim. Well, if you need it, form a working group. They'll report every Friday and then get steering direction. I think that, so there is one new thing. Oh, any more questions for Gemma before I deviate? Thank you, Gemma.
Thank you.
So we also, the TSC finally went into an interim stage, and it's kind of getting into a formal process. I think they're working out the membership components to it, and so hopefully it'll be more populated here in the meantime. But there's an avenue for, I've been invited to bring up any items from this committee that we want to have them discuss. And I know one of these conversations is going to be this license talk in the future. I'm going to try to form a proposal around it or something formal, since we're going to have to do steps. Is there any other items for this next week of interest that I need to bring up to the TSC?
I mean, they should probably review what we've put down in escalation paths and so on, right? Where they are basically in the path.
Yeah,
So that
I
would probably be
already
good.
gave them a rundown of the governance policy, how it overlays with them, and there was no red flags given. So
Mm.
I think we're integrated with them, at least for whatever the interim stage is.
Who's on the TSC right now? Kevin?
You have Kevin, Andrew, Guile, Matt Davis, Joaquin from the Parameters Group, and
Mhm.
some other folks. I can't remember the full batch list. There's like 9, I think, in total, something like that. Which most of those people are going to transition once they become a public forum. So
Mhm.
I think
Those are
they're
good mix.
interim for a month or 2. Yeah, I'll get more. I'll pass over the responsibility of explaining them, Matt. Once he gets a full month behind them, I'll bring him in to go over their progress. I mean, if he's dragging me into their meetings, I'll drag him into our meetings. Okay. The last bullet I think we already covered, which was Nick Clarke stepping in for Pat. Open forum. Any questions from anyone, in particular to anyone in the committee? This is opportunity for any observers to ask questions as well. Okay. If not, then that concludes today's call. I will get meeting minutes sent out and update Gitbook, and look forward to a project incubation policy draft coming in. I think I'm going to drag you, Adam, and Sebastian to help me review criteria on that before I publish the draft.
Okay.
Just so I can make sure.
I appreciate dragging because I can't keep track of all the things happening throughout the week anyway. So try to pull me, please.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Those ats and tags help a lot to keep on top of the things I need to get done.
And I think you'd have a good interest on it too, Ronald. I just don't know your availability with the utility working group as well. If you want to help review some of that criteria.
I definitely want, and actually I'm asking for a few minutes after this call, if that's possible for you.
Yeah, absolutely. We can just stay on the recording.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank y'all. I'll go ahead and end the recording.
Yep. All right. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy your weekend.